Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us again with this 1950s Fun Chat. This is number 58, Jackie, in what we have recorded over the year plus with wonderful memories from wonderful people who lived in the decade of the 1950s, or even with some folks whose experiences of perhaps their parents or their grandparents from the 1950s really made an impact on their lives, and they have shared about it on our shows, which makes it so much fun. And we're so glad for each and every subscriber we have to our channel, along with each and every person who clicks the like button and who even just listens to the Fun Chat and doesn't even do those things. Right, Jackie?
Indeed.
Yes.
So let me tell you and reiterate what Janine just said. We want you to peruse what you are looking at in front of you and look at the bottom. It says www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. There you will find all the information you might want to know about the book, the authors, the vendors, and this 1950s Fun Chat. Mm-hmm. So also look up in the upper right-hand corner. You see this cover of our book. It features a beautiful North Dakota sunset, which wraps around the book. And then look at the bottom right-hand corner. You see a little white dot. Actually, that is more than a dot. It is the National Independent Press Award in the regional nonfiction category as a distinguished favorite. And we received that this spring in April. So we were surprised and pleased to have been awarded this. Mm-hmm. But today we're going to go on with our guest, and I'd like to have you meet Lynette Baumgarten Nieuwsma. She was raised in a farming and ranching family near Durbin, North Dakota, which is southeast of Castleton. Lynette graduated from North Dakota State University with a bachelor's degree in animal science and ag econ. In later years, she obtained a master's degree in business from NDSU. Lynette and her husband, Gary, currently live in Bismarck, moving there after she retired from a 40-year career, 10 years as a county extension agricultural agent, followed by 30 years of working in rural electric cooperatives, 25 of those years as CEO, Slope Electric in North Dakota and Beltrami, and I'm Electric in Minnesota. And please correct me later on if I was incorrect pronunciation. So throughout her career, Lynette broke gender barriers by becoming the first female county extension agent in North Dakota, and then becoming the first female rural electric cooperative manager in both North Dakota and Minnesota. Lynette and Gary have 2 sons, Sean and Kyle, and they have 4 grandchildren. So, welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat, Lynette.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Lynette.
Hi.
Good to see you. I just got your book last weekend, so I'm really anxious. I just started digging into it.
Well, good for you.
Thank you.
So, Lynette, your introduction notes a couple of your unique degree and career choices for a woman at that time. So, how did your childhood upbringing influence those choices?
Well, it absolutely influenced them. I grew up on a farm which raised and showed registered Hereford cattle. That was my passion. And it was actually my legacy, as I was fourth generation into the Hereford business, third generation of showing cattle under the banner of Baumgarten Hereford Acres. So it was pretty natural to want to go into the field of animal science that I cared about so much. The second big influencer that I came from a very active 4-H family. All of us were active in 4-H, both in the showing livestock and in the area of projects, demonstrations, livestock judging, just anything you could do in 4-H. I think we did it. My dad was a 4-H leader for 40 years. So 4-H had a big influence on my college life, and particularly my first career I had as an extension agent. The third thing that really influenced me were my parents, in that they gave us a tremendous work ethic. We just had to work hard enough and we could get it done. Also, they convinced us and showed us that there were no barriers to what that we could do. They encouraged us to do whatever we wanted to do and not set any limitations upon us. So entering the field of animal science and then going into the extension career was a pretty natural path for me. Extension, of course, a large part of that is working with 4-H youth, but I also had the confidence in the livestock production area, my organizational skills, my speaking skills, those that I felt very comfortable going into the field of extension work.
No, Lynette, it's so interesting that you speak so highly of the 4-H program and how it helps develop our personalities in our leadership abilities and our citizenship abilities, and just our a style of how we want to present ourselves in the future, because we've had that awesome background of having been 4-H members, and many of our Fun Chat guests who have been in 4-H laud the same praise for 4-H. And wouldn't it be wonderful if every child born could be a 4-Her?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
So that very, very first job you got as an extension agent, where was that? And were there barriers or put up at that point, but you just overcame them, or what?
My first job in extension, I actually started in a kind of a internship kind of program in McLean County, but my first permanent full-time job was in Emmons County as Emmons County agent, which is ironic because Emmons County is probably one of the most conservative counties in the state. So to pick the first female county agent in that county was something I think to overcome. However, I guess I never saw barriers. I mean, maybe I was naive at that point, but I saw barriers as opportunities. I remember early in my career when a farmer came in and just started grilling me about a whole lot of things. And after he was done, he said, I just had to come in and see what this woman knew. And I asked him, well, how did I do? And he said, you did good. You'll be good in this career. And that's what you just had to do, move forward, even with the people who might have questioned a little bit at the beginning. Just do your job, and pretty soon they'll see what you can do.
Yes.
Right. And did that carry through your entire career? Like, just show them what I can do, and then they won't have anything to say negative about me.
Yeah, absolutely. When I moved into the REC field, I knew, one of the things I had to overcome, or probably not overcome, but what I had to do is build good working relationships with other managers of rural electrics. And I knew there were some that probably questioned what I was doing there, but I knew I was going to be okay when at one of our meetings one time, it was a meeting where there was socializing and a manager's meeting. And one of the managers said to me, you're more like one of the guys than some of the guys. And you just gotta have fun with your job too, and earn respect of the people that you're working with.
Right. I would think, coming from a cattle showing background as well, that really helped prepare you for being in a male environment and working your best to prove that it's hard work. It's not a matter of male and female. It's hard work, and the results that are obtained because of that hard work that get you to where you are. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. From the time we were in 4-H, and I was in both what we call the girls club and a boys club. But in our boys club, we had an all-girls judging team, which my dad was always proud of.
Really cool.
He led. But as we moved into animal science, of course, as you know, there were several other gals before me in animal science, so that wasn't totally breaking that barrier. But as you were on judging teams and other events, Little I, all of those kind of things, you just did the work. And I was never into proving that a woman could do the job. I just did what needed to be done. But as other women followed me into both of my careers, I was real proud that I'd opened some of those doors.
And how did those women depend on you? Did they come to you for support or advice?
We had good conversations both ways. I mean, I talked to them as well, just as I did to other managers and that, but there's probably a little special bond between, there wasn't another woman in the North Dakota RECs, but when I moved to Minnesota, a few years after I became manager, another gal did, and she has since retired too, and we've just really had good conversations about that. And she told me that her board had said, well, if they can hire a woman at Beltrami, maybe we should too. And they of course made a very good choice in her. And then after that, many more followed. The same in extension right now. There's many, probably almost as many women as there are men in extension service in North Dakota anyway.
Lynette, let's go back into the 1950s in your growing up time. Did your mom expect you to help in the house too, as well as working outside?
Both. I mean, I grew up. I was what was considered the first boy in the family.
Sure.
My older sister was definitely more domestic than me. So she spent more time in the house, but certainly, I did everything in the house too, and helped take care of the garden, help do all of those kind of things that we did back there to run the farm and the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. Such an important part of living in that time where families work together. And
do that.
You had to do that in order for survival on the prairie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One time I remember my father said, you girls are nothing less. We depend upon you to do chores. Your job is important, whether it be big or small. And that really made me feel good because I'm part of this team. And I didn't, as a young girl, I didn't really think about that until he mentioned it. And so I see that's what happened with you too.
Yeah, I think that's how you grow up with that kind of confidence that you can do anything you set your mind to.
Sure. Right. Sure. Yeah. Tell us about some of your projects in the girls' club and what you learned from them.
Okay, our girls' club was Durbin Daisies. Our boys' club was Durbin Livestock, which tells you where I came from. But in the girls' club, of course, did sewing. I was never the best seamstress, but I sewed. And we did canning projects, and I like photography. I did several photography exhibits at the state fair. The girls' club is probably the base of where I did most of my demonstrations, and later on speeches. Consumer judging kind of came later, so I was more involved in the livestock judging through the boys' club. But we did it all. I won several really nice trips in 4-H to Chicago and Washington, D.C. And that, as we spoke about later, helped develop the leadership skills, which I credit again to 4-H.
Do you remember your first demonstration?
Yes, let's see. My first demonstration was fairly simple, and it was using how to use measuring tools for baking. And so how you use the dry measuring cup, how you use the liquid measuring cup,
Yes.
how you level things up, how to be accurate, all of those kind of things, which I remember. Yeah.
Yes.
They are the basis for baking, particularly, and
Absolutely.
as well as cooking. But I always think cooking is a little bit more, a little of this and a little of that in order to make it taste well. But baking, the accuracy is so important, and what a great first step to teach your audience in be a successful baker.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think, Lynette, about your country school, I understand you went through grades 1 through 8. What are some outstanding memories from that?
Oh gosh, it was just fun. It wasn't almost school, you know. Yeah, it was a 2-room school, and probably a little bit more modern than some of the country schools. We had 1st through 4th grade in one room, a library in the middle, and 5th through 8th grade in the other room. Down in the basement, we had our lunchroom. In the other half of the room, we had our it might be called a fire room now, which probably wasn't the safest place when I think about it, how we played dodgeball in 4 cement walls and a few poles in between. but we had fun. The old swing sets outside. The teachers lived in a little house that was next to the schoolyard, and the Durbin store was next door, but there was a line and a fence that during school time we were never to go beyond that, which would have been going over to the store and the post office. And it still prepared us. Going to a country school, looking back, I see that the subjects that the teachers were very good at, you became very good at. I feel I got a very good math background, reading background. And then there were some areas maybe like history and geography that we didn't learn as much in, or maybe it was just where my interests were as well. But we had very good teachers through that whole time period. So,
how about science?
Yes, science was pretty well taught.
Good.
And then, did Durbin have a high school?
No, I don't believe it ever did. And we went to Castleton from there.
And did you feel prepared going into a larger school system?
I did academically. Socially it was a little bit different. I think one thing that really helped out is that Chaffee and Wheatland, a couple other rural schools came into the high school at the same time I did. So many of my friends became those that also came in from another area. But you learn more about diversification of people, which is still in the whole world of diversification is pretty minor in Castleton, North Dakota.
Yes.
But you learned about people who came from different backgrounds, people of different, probably that had more economics, had more wealth than we did. It was the first time I'd ever heard of people getting a whole new wardrobe every season.
Really?
Some of that, you learned the difference in life that you started seeing that your eyes hadn't been open to as a child.
We might have gotten a different wardrobe, but we had to sew every blessed piece of clothing we had.
That's right.
Which was that was the norm, I think, for a lot of young girls, at least girls who grew up in the country back then.
Yeah, and who had a 4-H background.
Yes.
Otherwise, they may not have.
Definitely.
And our clothes were nice. We just didn't appreciate them probably at the time.
Probably.
Yes. Yeah. Was your mother your seamstress teacher?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Plus the other 4-H leaders as well.
Okay. And even in that era of the 1900s, so many women knew the art of sewing. Whether it could be in a very advanced stages or it could be in very freshman stages, but they knew at least how to sew on a button and how to darn a sock. Probably because we made sure, as probably as was done in your family, that the clothes born were well used. Maybe I should say well loved, and and especially, did you ever wear hand-me-downs in from your sister?
Oh, certainly.
Yes. Uh-huh. And that's what, I think anymore in this generation, it might be something that is not necessarily done anymore unless the clothing was from an infant or from a young child, and then those might be passed on. But again, that's another change from the culture of the 50s versus the culture of the 2000s and the 2020s.
Yeah.
Right.
Christmas pictures were usually, all three of us girls wore the same thing. So
okay.
sometimes I had to wear an outfit twice, and sometimes my poor younger sister had to wear it 3 times.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, did your school perform Christmas programs? Did the teachers do that? So
yes.
anything?
Yep. We had our Christmas programs where you learned your part. We had programs were a big part both at school and, of course, at church. We prepared for those Christmas programs, and everybody came to watch.
Yeah. Did you ever take field trips to Fargo? Like the parents would put the kids in the carpool, and then you'd go to anything, a play or anything in Fargo.
Fargo, maybe not as much as I remember with YCL of going to Bismarck.
Exactly.
You went to YCL?
Yeah.
So did we.
With Fargo, I do remember us going on kind of our Christmas parties and doing roller skating and then going for pizza or something like that in Fargo.
Okay. Tell our audience, Lynette, about your experiences in YCL and what even YCL is.
Well, YCL is kind of along the governance area where if you went to Bismarck at that level, they selected officers a little bit like is done in FFA, where you started learning about governance, particularly of the state. We got to tour the Capitol. We sat in on some sessions. And I don't remember a great deal about it, but I remember learning, and that's probably our government learning experience, that what we learned through in grade school.
And YCL is what? That's
I believe Youth Citizens League.
Young Citizens.
Young Citizens.
Right, you're close. Yeah, Young Citizens League. And you probably know those YCL songs.
Oh, yes.
We won't bother our audience.
I'm not a singer.
Yes. Well, and what were your YCL meetings like in your school?
I think it was mostly just trying to learn about who our local, I think our local politicians came in and talked to us a time or two, and just learning about the structure of North Dakota government.
And it would be a good opportunity to learn Robert's Rules of Orders.
Yes.
For, conducting a meeting. That and 4-H were very, very helpful.
Yes.
For me.
And I don't know that YCL is even available anymore. It'd be, viewers, if you were part of YCL program, Young Citizens League, and most of the times these were in country schools in North Dakota and I believe South Dakota, and I don't know if they expanded beyond those states.
And Wyoming as well. I remember seeing that.
We'd love to hear about that. Please comment below and let us know if you were a YCL member, because that particular program was very big in our Minokan grade school too. It was, Lynette, when we were in those country schools, we had wonderful experiences with not only academics, but offering experiences with life beyond the classroom. And sometimes I think it's easy to think that if you came from a country school, you didn't have all the advantages that those children from a bigger school city, had. But really, it was phenomenal what those country teachers invested in us in order to be well-rounded students.
Yes, and the places that things like YCL and 4-H took us.
Exactly.
The opportunities we had for leadership in 4-H was tremendous.
We always said that, Jackie and I always said that we we were big fish in a small pond. But then when we got to NDSU, we were small fish in a big pond,
Yes.
and we
were still fish.
yeah.
And we took part at NDSU because
Yes.
we'd have the experience in a small pond.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. And we swam and we learned and we had fun. And of course, when you get to those big ponds, there are so many more opportunities. It's not as if that you will necessarily be a part of the opportunities presented, but you get to select and you get to choose what the pathway that you want to have in those big ponds, as I'm sure, and you well know that because of your experiences after college graduation and professionally. Lynette, there are often two questions that I'd like to ask our guest. And the first one is, can you think just off the top of your head, a fun memory of the 1950s?
Growing up, and this would be in the 50s because I was quite young, I remember us going out to the Sandhills. The Sandhills is where we pastured cattle in southwestern North Dakota. And because, of course, we farmed in the Red River Valley, so not a lot of pasture land there. So we took the cattle down in the spring and brought them back in the fall. And pretty much many Sundays we went down, the whole family, with a picnic lunch. And the Sandhills were just that, lots of sand. And we had the best sandbox in the world. We'd take our pails and shovels and toy tractors and play there. We could play there for a long time. I had a picnic lunch, check the cattle. As I grew older and there were more tasks to do down there, then it was usually Dad and I going down, sorting or getting something in or doing whatever needed to be done. Checking the windmills was definitely one of the things that we always did there to make sure that they were working. And it was amazing what we could get done with a pretty docile herd and a bucket of feed with not very elaborate working shoots at that point in time. And the treat that we always had after the job was done, we'd stop by at Happy Valley store and get a pop and a candy bar.
Okay, that's right. Before our fun chat recording, you had talked to me about your dad's way with handling cattle. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because he was certainly gifted.
He was, I guess I referred to him as a bull whisperer, but he had a way with cattle, whether it was breaking them for showing or just the herd was docile, which of course was a help, but he was very gentle with cattle. He was a very gentle man to start with. And a friend told me this later, that he lived down in the Sandhills area. And one time he was watching Dad win in the gate. And at that point in time, he was in his 80s anyway, upper 80s. And my dad had some health issues and limped quite a bit. And he said, what is Hilbert going to do in there with the trailer? And so he watched from afar, figuring he'd help him out if he needed to, but he didn't need to. His dad brought out the feed bucket, opened the door, just opened the trailer door without any working facilities and took the feed bucket out, and a bull followed him right into the trailer, and he shut the door and off they went.
Yeah,
What a gift. And can you explain to our viewers also, as many may not be familiar with North Dakota having sandhills, where were the sandhills located?
The Sandhills is in southeastern North Dakota.
Okay, all righty.
And that land was in my grandfather. I'm not sure how my grandfather acquired it, but my grandfather owned it for many, many years. We had 3 separate pastures in it. So normally we had 3 herd bulls, 1 in each. And that was where the cattle were bred and raised over the summertime.
Sure. Lynette, what from the 1950s was so influential to you as a young adult, and even as you matured throughout your life?
I think the family connections, the family and neighborhood connections. As we grew up, birthdays and holidays were always very important, and the extended family would get together. My mom came from a big family, and we always gathered there at Christmas. We always gathered at my other grandma's at Christmas too. Most of the time on Christmas Day, having 2 meals.
Oh.
We were full by the time we were done on Christmas. And birthdays were no little gathering. It was the one thing that I always said afterwards, the women who have birthdays shouldn't have to work so hard for their own birthdays, but they put out a spread, and all the neighbors, which several of them are extended relatives as well, would come over and visit and stay quite a long time. And so I remember those fun neighborhood gatherings and family gatherings.
This brings to mind, did you have a favorite food that was made and served in the 1950s?
We raising our own cattle, we always butchered, and so we had a lot of beef. And something that I haven't had for a long time that I remember eating quite often being young was Swiss steak. It was actually the round steak, and and it was quite good.
Yes. Mom would make that too.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, for holidays, being part Norwegian, is lefse.
Exactly.
Just gotta love the lefse.
Yeah. So I thought of a question we're kind of going back to this, but are there any members of your family who have continued on your farm's ranch?
My brother has continued in the Hereford business, but he is out at Belfield, North Dakota, and he married a woman who is no longer with us, who passed away from cancer, and he is now remarried, but he is out where she grew up, another Hereford family. And that area is probably much more suited to raising cattle than eastern North Dakota is.
So your sons or any of that generation are not interested in continuing?
Not my sons. Now, my brother Raleigh, his son Jake will be in the cattle business with him.
Okay.
Is in the cattle business. He just got married, and he's in the cattle business with him as well.
Nice. Well, viewers, our guest today has been Lynette Baumgarten Nieuwsma from Bismarck, North Dakota, originally from Durbin, eastern North Dakota. And what a wonderful career she has had, having been a child of the 1950s and learning the values and a hard work ethic from her family, which really helped catapult her into, you might say, crashing that glass ceiling in North Dakota. We're so delighted, Lynette, that you joined us today. Thank you so very much. This has been fun to reconnect.
Yeah.
You're welcome. It has been fun.
Good.
Thanks.
So next week, viewers, we will bring another guest to our 1950s Fun Chat, someone who will also share their joy of living in the 1950s and the impact that it made on their lives. So until the next time, we hope you remember perhaps the times of poodle skirts, maybe rock and roll. We didn't even go into the music of the 50s, and malt shops. Oh my, we talk about that, Jackie, but we never necessarily went to a malt shop either.
No.
I think just something that we saw on television when we were able to get a television to view it. But so much fun for the 1950s and so many changes for the lives of people in that decade. So until next time, bye-bye.
But before you go, be sure to hit that red subscribe button and click on the thumbs up button, and tell your friends, even your family, about the 1950s Fun Chat.